good evening, and welcome to tonight's online session. Our topic is about preparation of extension of time claim. As we all know, most of the projects anywhere in the world are experiencing the disruptions and delays, which is we all know is very common as a result of claims or which is commonly a result of claims or disputes. Now, proving the delay claims is, as you know, is not an easy task. In order for the contractor to be successful in the submission of an extension of time claim, he must first establish the causation, then demonstrate the time-related disruptions that was experienced as a result of the delay event. Now, this process of recording the delays is a process that requires continuous involvement of the planning team, of you, all of you. Most of you are planning engineers here, with the support from all other departments of the project. So now moving on, our topics for tonight will cover, of course, we will have an introduction of an EOT, and then we will discuss the causes of these delays. We will have an overview of the request process for an extension of time. What are the supporting documents that is needed in submission of claim, and all other items that we have to consider in the claim. And then we will have an overview of what are the available delay analysis methods. And then at the end, I will show you some like a structure of the EOT report. Since it is a big report, maybe I will not be able to provide you it through the slides. But later on, I will give a sample report to the host for you, for your use as a guide or as a reference in the future. So now let us first discuss or define what is an extension of time. I know most of you are planners here, and the extension of time is very common to all of you. However, let us first define, before we proceed, let us first define what is an EOT, what is an extension of time. These may include events that could not be reasonably foreseen at the time of the contract signing, but it shall not include the own delays of the contractors. So what is it? It is an extension of time refers to the extended period that allows for the rescheduling of the completion date of the contract to a later date commonly caused by delays that are not attributable to the contractor. So as I have said earlier, this may include events that could not be foreseen, could not be considered at the time of the contract signing or during the tender period. But however, it should not include the delays that is the own delays of the contractor. So any other delays that's not caused by the contractor, that may be considered for extension of time claim. Now moving on. So what is the purpose of an extension of time? Why do we have to apply for an extension of time? One of the reasons that the contractor is applying for an extension of time is to grant an EOT to the contract, which will relieve him from the liability of damages, from the liability of the application of liquidated damages, which is most contracts has a liquidated damages clause. Now, as we say it may be considered as a benefit to the contractor. However, the contractual mechanisms allowing the extension of time are not simply to the contractor's benefit. The main beneficiary is, of course, the client or the project. So let's say, for example, there has no EOT, or EOT mechanism in the contract. And then let's say a delay occurred, which let's say was not the contractor's fault. It could be a force majeure, or it could be caused by the client itself or the employer itself. Then what would happen? The contractor would no longer be required to complete the works by the specified completion date that is stated in the contract. Then what would happen next? In this case, the contractor would only have to complete the works at what? At a reasonable time. Now, what is this reasonable time? I mean, as long as it is reasonable, he can complete it without demanding him to complete at a specific date. Now, this is what referred to as a time at large. So, if the contractor was not able to complete the project at the specified completion date, and then there's no extension of time that is awarded by the client, then the completion date of the project will now be considered time at large. Okay. Now, if it is now time at large, it's now there would not be the employer will not have an opportunity to apply the liquidated damages. Another purpose is to avoid the prevention principle. So now, what is this prevention principle? Let's say, when an employer set a date for completion of the works, then by its own act or omission or its own fault, the contractor is prevented from achieving the completion date, then the employer cannot benefit from its action by levying the liquidated damages to the contractor. So if the cause of the delay is the employer and not the contractor, he cannot apply the liquidated damages to the contractor. The reason is the employer had caused the delays. In summary, now the main purpose of an EOT, someone is calling me, is to allow the date for completion to be extended for acts and omissions of the employer or the client. Therefore, this will now avoid the prevention principle, and it will ensure the application or the administration of the liquidated damages. So the liquidated damages principle would still operate. Next. Now, there are different types of delay. I'm sure you are all familiar with this. The excusable, the non-excusable, compensable, and non-compensable. Okay, excusable and compensable delays are those resulting due to events that is beyond the control of the contractor. And usually it is attributable to the employer, or it could also be due to other reasons like force majeure. Now, however, in FIDIC, you have to remember that in FIDIC, if the delay is caused by force majeure, it's not compensable, although it is excusable. The contractor has the sole responsibility to prove that the delays occurred are either excusable or compensable by referring to the reliable critical path analysis, which is, I'm sure, you as planners are already familiar with this. In order for the delay to be excusable and compensable, the contractor has to prove some different items. For example, the delay is not attributable to the events within its control and is fully attributable to the employer or to other factors, as long as it is not attributable to him. Then none of its own delay was ongoing. So what is this? I'm sure you're very familiar with this, a concurrency. So as long as there must be no concurrent delays with the delay events that's being relied upon. So as long as there is no own delay of the contractor that is ongoing, that is concurrent with the delay events that being relied of the claim. Okay, so now you have to remember this. We will not be, of course, if it is not excusable and non-compensable, there will be no EOT for that. Now, we will be discussing only the delays that is excusable because our topics for today is only about extension of time, so that's only about time related. We will not be discussing the cost of it, like prolongation cost. Maybe you may consider that as another topic. It's still pagdating sa cost, when it comes to cost or prolongation cost, it's a long discussion. Again, it could be another topic of discussion. Okay, proceeding now. So what are the common causes of these delays? What are the events that do you think may cause the delays to the contractor and may entitle him for an EOT? Now, I have listed here some events that only to give you an example. However, take note that this is only a guide. In your own project, you must always refer to your own contract. Most of the events in this list that we will be discussing came from FIDIC 1999. First is delay in handing over the project site. So there are cases that the project is already awarded, the project has already given the notice to proceed. However, the project site is still not available. It's still not been handed over by the client or by the employer to the contractor. So that can be a cause of delay that may be entitled to EOT. Next, the use or occupation by the employer of any part of the works, whether it's a section of the work, it's just one part of the work, even if not a full occupation or not full use of the project, then it can be considered as a delay, or it can be entitled to an extension of time. However, it must be noted that it should not be specified in the contract, because in some contracts there are like sectional completions, right? Like the section 1 or part 1 must be completed by this date and must be occupied by the employer, while the contractor is working on the rest of the part of the project. So as long as it's not specified in the contract, and then the employer used or occupied that part of the a section or part of the works or the project, then the contractor may be entitled for to apply for an extension of time. Next, different physical conditions from those provided during the tender stage. Now, if the actual site condition or physical condition of the site is different from what it is stated in the tender documents or in the contract documents before the signing of the contract, then we can say that the contractor may be entitled for an EOT. Next is changes to original scope of work. Of course, that's very common. You all know what is this. This is just a simple variation. So if there's a changes to the scope of work, whether it's it could be an addition or a modification to the scope of work, and then therefore it is a variation to the scope of work, variation to the contract, that would be an opportunity for the contractor to apply for an extension of time. Next, late engineering deliverables. So it's very common when the type of contract is on a traditional form of traditional, meaning the contract was awarded, all the design has to be done by the employer or the client's in-house designer or appointed consultant, as long as the design is within the responsibility of the client or the employer. There might be a late in the delivery of engineering information or other design information. So that is an opportunity for an extension of time. Late procurement deliverables. There are some items like owner-supplied materials, owner-supplied equipments. So this may cause a delay if the employer's team or the employer's in-house team or consultant will procure these materials. So the liability will be with the employer and not to the contractor. frequent revisions for engineering deliverables. I'm sure you all have experienced that the client may change his mind from what he has decided today, today's meeting, to the next meeting. So frequent revisions could always cause delays. Delay in the approval of, above the contractual allowance. Now, there could be like shop drawings. If the contractor has submitted shop drawings, so you have to always be mindful of what is the allowance, the period of approval of those shop drawings. If you submit it on the first time, how many days should the client reply back to you, whether it is approved or disapproved? On the second submission, how many days should be? It is 40, it may range from 7 days, 14 days, 21, 28 days. So as from the first submission, second submission, the period, the number of days may be reduced. So you have to check it from your own contract. Of course, the delay in payment, as we all know, as we say, the cash flow is what the lifeblood of the construction. So if there's a delay in payment, you would expect that it may cause a delay in the resources, in the materials, and subsequently it will have an effect in the delay in the overall completion of the project. Now, what are the causes of other delays? Out of sequence for engineering and procurement deliverables. So it may also be caused by the client. There are some items that needs their approval, and while you are waiting for their approval, you have to resequence your work, your activities on site. So that causes delays. Now, later on, we will have to we will be discussing on how you record or how do you support these things, and out of sequence, late information. All of these must be must be supported by a proper documentation. Suspension of work. If the client has suspended the work for any reasons, of course, you will be entitled for extension of time. Adverse weather conditions. Since this list came from FIDIC, adverse weather conditions is on the list. Now, if your contract is not FIDIC, you have to check, because maybe the adverse weather conditions, the force majeure, the existing underground conditions, that may not be existent in your contract. So we are discussing these things. This is the common causes of delays, and as I mentioned, my basis is the FIDIC 1999. Now, you have to refer to your own contract first and find the clauses related to these delays before you prepare for your EOT claim. You have to remember that any delays occurring due to events that is in the list are usually excusable. So if it is excusable, you will be entitled for extension of time. And then you have also to note that if there are delays, the contractor must take note that he has a responsibility to mitigate the impact of the delay. It could be a partial or whether it's a total mitigation, as long as you have done a mitigation, and then you must record it. Now, I have in the FIDIC, there are there are clauses that is related to, I mean, you could pinpoint which clauses referred, for example, late information. So a time extension request must always be concise, and you have to remember that you have to reference this to a contract clause. You have to reference it to a contract clause that would allow the request or provide proof of the delay for a reason, and then you have to propose a recovery plan. So when you submit an extension of time claim, when you submit a notice of delay, it is very important that you have to reference it to the clause under the contract. Now, I'm using the FIDIC 1999. I will just go through with this list. When you are claiming for extension of time due to late information, that is clause 1.9 in FIDIC 1999, and then clause 2.1, when you are denied or you were provided a late access or possession of the site, and clause 4.7, if there are errors in setting out information, because the setting out information is usually provided by the client. Clause 4.12, adverse physical condition. Clause 4.24, fossils. If, like for example, if you are doing excavation and then there are fossils that are found during the excavation, so you will be entitled for an extension of time. Testing, delay are one example of this. Yes?
Wala kang asin?
Ano daw? Okay.
Sabi mo mas.
Proceeding. So what is the example of delays caused by authorities? I think we have experienced this a few years ago when what is it? A GCC summit is being held here in Doha, 2016, I think 2015, 2016. So the authorities or the emir, I think, declared that a certain area in Doha is not allowed to be access is not allowed in that area, so no construction is allowed because I think they will be using the hotel in that area. So things like that can cause delays. So in that case, the contractor was entitled for an extension of time. If there are engineers' instruction to suspend the work, so definitely it could be a reason for extension of time. 10.3, employer's interference with test on completion. The test on completion, it should not be interfered by the employer for unreasonable reasons. So if that was interfered by the employer, that can be an extension, an entitlement to extension of time. If there's a termination by the contractor, employer's risk or any events that is under employer's risk, force majeure. Now in FIDIC, as I mentioned earlier, force majeure is an excusable event, but it is not a compensable event. And then 19.6, optional termination. So in all these cases, the contractor must show that the delays that was happened have affected the schedule of the works, and it affected the completion or the date of completion of the project. So you have to prove that. Now, the contractor must highlight the delay or the impact on the critical path of the project. So with that, I'm sure you are very well versed with that, being planning engineers. Now, how do you request for an extension of time? Number one here is identify the contract provisions for an EOT entitlement for the cause of delay. So you have to remember this. In order to ensure that an extension of time claim will be accepted and will be approved by the client or the client's representative, now there is a process that the contractor must follow. This process can be found in your contract documents. So therefore, this process, we will be discussing this, but this may differ from one project to the other. Now, we will only be discussing this as a guide. At least you will have an idea, you will have a guide on how to prepare or what is the process for requesting an extension of time. Now, if in your project, it looks like there is an extension of time that might be needed, the first step that you should do is what? Anyone? You must check the contract first. And that's very important. I know that there are many contractors who's doing the contract. They will only open the contract when there's already a dispute. No, it should not be. whether you are a planner, you're a quantity surveyor, you're a contract administrator, you must know your contract, okay? So if you think that there is a need for an extension of time in your project, the first thing that you should do is check your contract, because the contract provides when the time extensions are allowed and how you can request for this extension of time. You must, as number one says, you must identify where is the contract provision for an EOT. How much or when will you be entitled? What are these events that will give you an entitlement? If you would remember the previous slides that we have discussed, we look at different clause numbers in under the FIDIC. So you have to find those clauses in your contract. So for example, there is a delay in information of the client. So you have to find first where in the contract allows you for an entitlement for entitlement of extension that was caused by that delay. Okay. Now, generally, the contract provisions includes what? A requirement for a written notice. Submit immediately, you have to submit a notice of delay. And of course, you have to check from your contract how much period are you allowed from the time that you became aware of the event. How much period are you allowed to provide this notice? So make sure that your claim will not be time barred. Now, this notice serves as a basic heads up. This is the purpose of the notice. It serves as a basic heads up of the situation to the client or to the client representative. Then this notice allows everyone to get out in front of what the issue is. At least everyone will be aware. So now, once a notice of delay has been submitted, the next step is often to send a formal request for an extension of time. So before you do that, because if you have a delay, the first thing that you do, submit an extension of time. Okay, let's check let us check the program. So that should not be the first step, okay? Now, after you submit the notice, what's next? You have to document the delay event, all the correspondence. You have to keep all the contemporaneous records. You have to have a good record to support your claim that will be submitted later on. And then, as I have mentioned earlier, as a contractor, when there is the delay, you have a responsibility to mitigate that delay. Whether the mitigation is partial or full, you still have to present that to prove that you did the mitigation. So you have to include that in your narrative. What mitigation steps have you applied or you did in the project? Next, of course, this is of course all your favorites. Choose an appropriate delay analysis method. So I'm sure you are more familiar with this now. You have to choose the appropriate delay analysis method. So later in the next slides, we will be discussing a few of those, although I will not be discussing it in very much detail. I will not be discussing Primavera here. So I think we could do that in your other CPD discussions, okay? Next. So you have also to consider the issues of what? I'm sure this is very common to you also. Culpability, compensability, and concurrency. So what is concurrency? I'm sure most of you is familiar with this. What is concurrency? So if the delay that is caused by the client or other factors is concurrent, running concurrently with the delay that is in your own fault, so that is the concurrency. So I know it's a big, another topic that you may also consider it's a long discussion about, you can have a more detailed discussion on concurrency later on. You may consider that. That's also an interesting topic. Next is submit a claim report like quantity surveyors. Quantity surveyors will do the cost estimating, will do the cash flow, will do the cost calculation and everything. However, our weakness is always this whole report, whether it is an EOT claim, a time claim, or a cost claim. I think I would like to encourage you to step up a bit and try to improve your skills in the preparation of this whole report for an EOT. It is very good that you know how to prepare the program, you know to do, if you are a QS, you know how to do the cost estimating, the bill of quantities, you know how to conduct the tender. But the preparation of report itself, I'm sure it is something that will improve your skills. It will give you a different level of what's this? Knowledge in skills in the preparation of this report, because it is very good that you know how to prepare this, but it takes a different skill to narrate in detail what you have done. So that's in the quantity surveyors. That's what I am always encouraging them, that if you did the cost estimate, if you did your program, if you did your the schedules, if you did the delay analysis, I think it would be it would be better if you are also the same person will prepare the report in details, because you know all the details, you know how to defend the time claim. So you will be more, even if the rough draft only, if you need someone to improve this report, but the first draft or the initial draft must be coming from you, because the important information is from you. You're the only one who knows how to defend this delay claim. Okay, so that's now basically the general process on how to put the report together. Now we will proceed with the here. So there's a presentation here. This is a presentation that is patterned from the clause 20.1 of FIDIC 1999. So let us see. Can you read it clearly or no? Can you read
it's
it?
readable.
Clear.
So let's start with this. When delay event, so as long as you learned about you became aware that there is a delay event, now you have 28 days. Take note, this is based on FIDIC, huh? So if you will be applying this to your own project, you have to read your contract. The 28 days might be 30 days, 14 days, 10 days. So it may differ. Okay, now the contractor must notify within 28 days that there is an existing event that may influence the schedule or the completion of the project. Take note that if the contractor fails to serve this notice of claim, or at least the contractual or legal basis in the submission of a fully detailed claim within the allotted time that is stated here in the contract, then the notice, the claim will be invalid. Your claim will be time barred, and the client will have all his opportunity to reject your claim, even if you have prepared it you have spent so much time and effort in the preparation of that claim. Okay, so from the time that you have become aware of the event, you have 28 days to give notice, a written notice to the client. Then from that event, take note that the 42 days will start from the time that you became aware of the event, and some is mistakenly starting the 42 days from the issuance of notice. No, it's not how it is written in FIDIC. The 42 days will also start from that day that you became aware of the event. And from that, you have 42 days to submit the interim particulars. Now, if the event is like, what is a continuous event? What is a good example of continuous event? This COVID-19, right? The COVID-19 started in January. And now it is continuously and we don't know when it will end. So if it is causing a delay in your project, what you could do is to submit an interim particulars on monthly intervals. And that is stated there that you have to provide it on monthly intervals. Now, if that event, let's say the COVID-19 will end, let's say it will end at, let's say December 2021. Now, from the end of that effect of that event, the contractor has 28 days to provide or submit the final particulars. Now, if it is not a continuous event, the contractor must submit the final particulars. Can you see my cursor now? Okay. The final particulars must be submitted within 4 to 42 days. However, if it is a continuous event, the contractor may submit the interim particulars on monthly intervals, and then at the end of the effect, he has 28 days to submit the final particulars. Now, the 28 days, it says as agreed upon. So if you think you have, this may need a big bulk of information and you would need more time to prepare, you have to write to the client and get an approval that he agrees for an extension of the 28 days. That period is you have to inform the client and you have to receive his approval or agreement, okay? So that is basically the period. You can, I just put it in a graphical presentation, but it is like 2 paragraphs, 3 paragraphs in clause 20.1 of FIDIC 1999. You can read that later. Next. So what are the supporting documents that you would need? Of course, you need this notice that you have just provided. That is the first correspondence that you should see in your supporting documents. This is the notice of the specific event that is causing the delay. The best way to see how the project unfolded chronologically, and the notices between the players of events, the impact and the cost, this will all be the first part of your supporting documents. And then later on, you can add what? The RFI, the material submittal log, you can have a shop drawing log, inspection request. It is also important that you list all the activities that are impacted by the delay. So you can just make a summary of that and then make it like an appendix 1, attachment 1, or however you call it. Now you must have the exact amount of time required. The working days or calendar days must be specified. So take note of these. Don't just like write days, 42 days, 30 days. You must be if you will be using days to the rest of your report, make sure that you have defined what days is at the start of your report. Or if you have a, what's this, a definition of terms at the start of your report, you must define what days means, if it is a working day or it is a calendar day. And of course, you have to refer back to your contract, what days, how days is defined in your contract. Okay. Next, you have to submit a daily or periodic reports. However, the daily report is very important. It could be a daily report sheet. It could be a logbook, a journal. You may also include the equipment logs, the labor logs. It will be very helpful in determining the chronology of events, the progress of the work, the manpower and equipment at the site, the weather. It's make sure that it is regularly kept daily, that it is being kept regularly, okay? This will also show the if there are resources that went down or goes up, or if you need more resources, this will be reflected in your daily report, okay? What else? Sketches, photographs. The photographs, the videos, it should be taken, you should know that it should be taken regularly and must be what? Because it is an easy way, it's an accurate way in recording the actual conditions that has happened on site, how the work had progressed at that period of time. Of course, it is important that when you keep the photos, you have to label it. When was it taken? Or who took the photos, which specific area of the project it is, which view was it taken, and as much as possible, if you could put a description of that of the condition of that site that you have taken the shot. You may not be needed it immediately at the time that you took the photo, but later on, when you're already preparing the claim, that's the time that you would realize how important these photos are. Okay. Now, description of the actions taken by the contractor to prevent or minimize other delays. This is what I was mentioning earlier about mitigation. So when you had a mitigation plan, you have to describe, you have to identify the specific actions or steps that you have taken and how it prevented, how much it prevented the delays. Okay. If you had proposed an alternative solution and you present it to the client for approval or for agreement, you must have a record of that and include that in your supporting documents. Communications among the construction team that is related to the delays and problems related to the specific situation. These communications, it could be simple email, it could be a formal letter. Now, if you will be sending an email, take note, it is very important that when you send an email, because if later on your claim will not be agreed and it escalated to a dispute and then later on it went to arbitration or to litigation, this email at some point may not be accepted as a legal document. So how would you do it? Okay, immediately you sent an email. When you send an email, print it the next day and submit an official transmittal or put a covering letter to make it an official document. So it's okay to send an email, but if you think that this email is very important and will be useful later on, make sure that you attach it or formalize it by attaching it to a formal letter to make it a legal document. And of course, you are very familiar with the baseline schedule. Once the project started, I'm sure you should be preparing the baseline schedule, get it approved, or get it accepted by the client. And then at least you have that baseline for reference in your future updating of the schedules. The method of construction and the schedule updates, okay? This baseline or as planned schedules are important or has really planned as a schedule for the project. I mean, your original schedule is there. And then once that schedule was revised, was disrupted later on, it is very easy to compare. So you can use it for a time impact analysis, and then it will definitely show the occurrence of the events, and it will highlight the impact of that delay events to the project. What other additional items that you have to consider? As I mentioned earlier, the calendar days are different from working days, so you have to take note of that. The insurances and the bonds may need to be reissued. So if there will be an extension of time, definitely the insurance and bonds validity will be affected. So you have to note that it must be reissued, it must be updated, the validity period. Now, there are, since we are not in Qatar, the winter days will not be much affected, but in other countries, winter days are typically shorter and less productive compared to their summer days. However, in Qatar, I don't know, is it considered disruption, or I think it's already accepted that the contractor must have accepted the summer time schedule. We have a different working schedule, right, during summer period. So if the extension of time happened to be in that period, I think it is also important that you mention that or consider that in your EOT application. Additional items, time extensions requested should be adequate to cover all delays, including extra items that may be impacted. Now, this is one thing. Most of the clients or the consultants, once you submitted your extension of time claim, if you have not mentioned that it is your final claim for that specific event, they may write back to you. And then they will require you to state that this is your final claim for that specific event. Because there will be no additional time that the client will grant. Ayan, that I think this is the next line is saying that no additional time will be granted for the same item or for the same event once it has been approved. So it's not acceptable that once the client has awarded, let's say, awarded 60 days for this event, and then later on you realize that you have not considered, oh, I have not considered this, I have to reapply additional extension of time because of this. So that will not be accepted. So make sure that when you submit an extension of time for certain event, that will be a full and final claim for that specific item or a specific delay event. In case of a continuing delay, only one claim is necessary. So if you are claiming for a delay due to COVID-19, only one claim is necessary. You just have to submit it. If it is continuously, you can submit an interim in the, let's say, monthly intervals, just like what I have mentioned earlier. Next, in this one, this may not be readable anyway. I just have added this because I think it is useful for you as a reference. So it's just like a summary. It's a list of required records to establish properly substantiated EOT claim. I will not be reading this all, but I'll just, I'll just zoom it once. So for example, baseline schedule. Once in the project life cycle should be submitted within certain period from the project from the effective date. So it's just like a summary guide for you, which I believe it will be useful for you in the future. So that's why I just added it in this slide, okay? I will be providing the slide later on, so don't worry. Next, delay analysis. Okay, so we are now in the delay analysis. Delay analysis is basically, it is an investigation which is commonly done by forensic planner, forensic scheduler. They're the ones who determine the cause of the project, that how did it become late, what's the cause of being running late, and who is responsible for the delay. So they are the ones who's critically analyzing the delay. The analysis of the delay impact with the causes and effects of the delaying activities is, of course, we know is one of the most complicated types of claims analysis. But there are 3 steps here. The first one is the investigation phase. So what is the investigation phase? What you will do is collect all the evidences that is available. You have to collect all the daily record, the ones that we have discussed, daily records, correspondence, notices, information, drawings that is related to that. So that's the first phase. Collect all evidences that is available to you. And then the second step is description phase. This is the time that you analyze occasion. You have to analyze all the available information to you. Now, this is one thing that I have always observed. When you are analyzing, when you're on this second step, you have to take out all your emotions. The problem is for example, when you're in a consultant, when you are the client, somehow you've already, your heart and mind are already in the project. And then you're somehow emotional. May galit ka na. Ito na yung last part of the project. Now may conflicts na between the client, the consultant, and the contractor. At these stage, when you are preparing, either you are preparing the claim or you are analyzing the claim that is submitted to you by the contractor, always take out the emotions, all your emotions from the set aside, and then just analyze whatever is fact, all the facts, all the information that is in front of you. And then at that time, there's the time that you have to collate, you have to arrange all the information that is available so that you could now properly present the claim that is the EOT claim, okay? It says that it requires an expert with extensive knowledge of construction projects, the means, the methods, the scheduling, the ability to develop a sound methodology to conduct this analysis. That's why I think this thing is really left. It is a job of for a forensic analyst. When I was in ASTAT, I remember while we are focusing on the contractual aspect of each claim, or either contractual or quantum aspect of a claim, there is always one forensic planner that he is focused. His skill is focused on the investigation of this, on the analysis of the delays. And I can see that's the time that I see he will do all the different methods of delay analysis that will be discussed in the next slides. So let's proceed. Now, here is the delay analysis method. These are the different methods that is commonly used in when you analyze the delays. So in the next slides, we will be mentioning retrospective, perspective. So I think let's just be clear for those who are already very familiar with this. I'm sure you understand it very, very well because most of you are planners. If we have a guest who are not familiar with this, allow me to just, let's say, clarify what is the difference between retrospective and the perspective. Retrospective analysis, it means that you are looking back at what actually happened during the event. What was actually happened? That's the program that you are preparing. And then what's the other one? I'm lost. Perspective. Perspective is an analysis that is now looking into the future, and you are now assessing what might have happened. What might have happened that is in terms of this delay. So that's the difference. When the perspective is looking into the future effect of the delay, and then the retrospective is you are now considering or looking back on what actually happened. Okay, so these are the delay analysis methods when you are analyzing these delay claims. The first is as planned versus as built method. This is a retrospective analysis, and it is based on actual fact analysis. Your CPD team, I think this is also an interesting topic. You may have one topic discussing all these analysis methods in detail. It's very good. I mean, it's an interesting topic and I'm sure very good for you to know the differences of these delay analysis methods. Second is impacted, because today I will only be identifying all these. I will only tell you what are the available delay analysis methods that can be considered when you are preparing the EOT. Second is the impacted as planned method. This is a perspective method, and this is a theory-based. This is a theory-based analysis. Okay, so you see now the difference. Next, there's a collapse as built, or this is the other term is BAT4 method. It is also retrospective method, and it is also a theory-based. And then there is a window analysis method, which is also a retrospective, and however, this is based on actual fact-based method. As built method, of course, you know that. Contemporaneous method, this is a retrospective and an actual fact-based method. The time impact analysis, it's very common. I think this is one of the most popular method that that's being adopted in many contracts that I have encountered. This is a perspective and an actual base method. The TIA, or the time impact analysis, it is a combination of a window technique and an as-planned impact method. It usually concentrates on delay events, and then it applies the as-planned model on a window by window analysis. Now, the major distinction between the windows or the snapshots and this TIA or time impact analysis is that what's one? The first one is a retrospective analysis, the one we say that is looking back, and then this time impact is a prospective analysis, which is now considering the future as assessment of delays. Then the as planned but-for method. This is a perspective and theory-based method. And then the last two may not be very popular. The net impact method, this is a retrospective and theory-based. Say the same with the global impact method. So that's all that is delay analysis method that may be available to you when you are analyzing these delay events. Okay, this is, we're now all in almost last part of the presentation. This is just an outline of an EOT report. Okay, of course, this is just a table of contents that I have cropped from my sample EOT report. Of course, the first part will be an executive summary, and then you provide an introduction of your report. And then the background, it is the background of the project. You can start with what is your contract agreement, what are the related conditions of contract, and then who are the contractual parties. And then you mention if there are other consultants or other parties that is involved. And then you state the contract obligations of both parties. And then state what are the time for completion. If there is a liquidated damages in the contract, you better state the liquidated damages, and then how much if it is, if you have computed this. And then the entitlement, extension of time for completion. Now you mention your entitlement, and then what is your claim. So you now narrate your contractor's claim with the EOT claim. And then the notification of delay events, if you have notified, be sure to provide and mention all those. And then at the last part of the background, of course, you will provide the program of the works. And then from there, I'm sure you know now what are those program or schedules that needs to be provided there. Now, on the delay events, be sure that all the related delay events will be discussed in here in details. You provide the delays, what are the prevention, the mitigation that you had mentioned, you discuss in this section. And then on the section 5, this is the delay analysis, whether or whatever you choose in the one that we have time impact analysis, you have to discuss all this, and then whatever is the outcome of your analysis, this is your section now. And then the number 6 is the mitigation. And the last part is the entitlement. What do you think is your entitlement? How many days is your entitlement? So that's basically the summary. Okay. Now, on the next slide, it's just a sample of an executive summary. Yeah, we will not be discussing this anyway. Just it's only a format. At least just make sure that in your summary, in your executive summary, you mention all the important details. Because they say that, of course, we know that the upper management, when reading your report, if your report is this thick, they will not open all those. The management will only read your 1 or 2 pages executive summary. So make sure all the important points is written here in the executive summary. Then next is, what is this? What's the next one? This is the last part. This is the entitlement. So in here, you state what is the outcome of your delay analysis, and then how many days are you claiming, and so on and so forth. This is basically the summary of your EOT claim. So I think that's all for the EOT report. When I give these slides, at the last part of the slide, I will just attach the full sample of EOT report. I just did not put all those that would be boring anymore. So I'll just attach it. You can use it as a guide. It's just a general guide anyway. And then I just want to leave this quote to you, that this is important to keep in mind, because the test as to whether a claim should be allowed is on a balance of probabilities. The claim does not have to be proved beyond all this reasonable doubt. So in short, it is important to keep in mind that because of absolute precision will be difficult or more likely impossible to achieve when making or assessing a delay of a project. So a degree of flexibility is always be considered and may be adapted. And of course, the common goal is to reach an agreement for both parties, for the benefit of the project and all the parties of the project. So I think that ends my presentation, and I now open the floor for the question and answer.